Hey friends. So Bernie Sanders is in the very beginning of getting those God-blessed puppet strings cut and severed that goes from corporate America, the real owners of this country, down to the politicians, so that the politicians will have to represent us. So here's what I mean by that. By the way, if you like this kind of stuff, and I talk mostly about natural health and healing on my website, TomBerkenmeyer.com, just go to TomBerkenmeyer.com, just like it's spelled here. But anyway, to get back on track, Bernie Sanders is in the very beginnings of a process of cutting those puppet strings from corporate America to the politicians, because corporate America are the real owners, and almost everybody in America knows this, which explains why Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in the entire country. So yesterday, February 19th, today is February 20th, February 19th, 2019, he announced that he's running for president for 2020. So, on day one, within the first 4 hours, Bernie Sanders raised $1 million, and he did it from over 100,000 little dollar donations from 100,000 people at about $27 at a time. So think about that. The way that politics and business as usual is done is they get a few donors, millions at a time, just a few, and then they represent those few. Bernie has taken that and flipped it upside down. Instead of getting just a few donors at millions of dollars a pop, he's getting, as of yesterday, after his first 4 hours, he's got over $100,000 ordinary average people donating 20-something dollars at a time. Game changer. If you want to drain the swamp for real, he's the guy. So that's as grassroots as it gets. And the reason this is so important, you guys know it, but here's a really cool way of framing it. It's really simple. If you have private financing of elections, politicians serve those private interests. If you have public financing of elections, politicians serve the public, and we have a representative democracy. Now, there's one little caveat to that. Bernie Sanders, he's at an institutional disadvantage. And what I mean by that is he needs hundreds of thousands, millions. Eventually, he'll have millions and millions. In one day, 4 hours of one day, he got over 100,000 people to donate 20-something bucks at a time. Wow. But those are still private donations, but they're from ordinary people instead of big, giant multinational corporations and billionaires. But he's at an institutional disadvantage because, when he goes up against President Pinocchio, and before then, other Democrats who are just like President Pinocchio, who take all that big corporate PAC money and billionaire and lobbyist money, they only need to make a few phone calls to a few people, and they could possibly out-fundraise him. However, Bernie is actually keeping up, or possibly, it's too early to know, but that's a huge number from just one day, 4 hours of one day. I think Bernie could have a fair shot, of outraising President Pinocchio, outraising other Democrats who are doing exactly what President Pinocchio is from the big dollar donors. I think from the small dollar donations, the grassroots efforts, he's going to at least keep up for sure, possibly outdo all of them. And then that changes the whole game. Isn't that amazing? But that's just the end game. That's not the end all be all to do private donations through millions of people in small dollar amounts. That's just a stepping stone to get to the end result. And this is important. So the end game is to get all the money out. So there is no donors from the private entities at all. So that we move to 100% publicly funded elections. That is the 28th Amendment to the Constitution, which Bernie Sanders, that's part of his platform, to amend our Constitution so we get all the private money out once and for all, going over the Supreme Court, snipping those puppet strings that lead from corporate America, the real owners, down to the politicians. So that's the end-all be-all game. But in the meantime, he has to raise the money from somewhere because of our insane system of legalized bribery. He just chooses to do it from ordinary people rather than PACs and super PACs and lobbyists. So that's a game changer, and that's important for everybody to understand. It's also important to understand that in the primaries, Bernie is going to go up against other people who are doing what President Pinocchio is doing, that is taking the big money from the establishment. So we have to realize that, show up in the primaries and vote for uncorrupted Bernie Sanders. And then when we go to the general election, we have to realize President Pinocchio promised us he would never take money from the establishment. He's taken over $100 million as of a couple months ago, so I'm sure it's more, from the establishment, the big dollar donors, after he promised us he wouldn't. So he's a liar. He's objectively a liar, and anyone that says he's a truth-telling man needs a therapist to bring them back down to reality, because it's factually not true. So Trump is a liar. That's why I call him President Pinocchio. It's not subjective to my opinion or anybody else's opinion. He is what he is, and he's a liar. So we have to remember that. And Bernie Sanders is he's gonna cut the puppet strings, man. It's not President Pinocchio. President Pinocchio isn't draining the swamp. He swamped the drain, and now the swamp is overflowing with shit. So Bernie Sanders is going to sever those puppet strings. Thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate that. Okay guys, thanks for watching this video. Feel free to drop your comments below. And let's go get them. Bernie Sanders 2020. I'm happy to have somebody who comes to the table uncorrupt finally, so we can have honorable disagreements and agreements. Because here's another thing, I'll close on this point. If a politician is taking money from those PACs and super PACs and lobbyists, if they're legally bribed, in other words, I don't really give a shit what they have to say. Their opinions are not equal to mine or yours. They're inferior. If someone comes to the table uncorrupt, we can have different opinions and they're equal. So that's the big defining difference. I'm not interested in what any politician has to say who's on the take, who comes to the table with a default conflict of interest. I don't really care about them or what they have to say. They can just get the fuck out. So I want to have these honorable agreements and disagreements with people, and Bernie Sanders is the guy that's best positioned to cut those puppet strings. Oh, one more note. I fibbed, I guess. So one more closing note. So there's a few other people running also who reject all PAC money and super PAC money and lobbyists, and that's awesome. So credit where credit is due. The thing that makes Bernie stick out ahead of them, for me, the biggest thing by far, is you go back 50 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 50 years, Bernie has been there on these policy positions before they were popular. He's been there when they were deeply unpopular. These other people are coming out when it's popular. It's easy when it's popular. Look at Hillary Clinton. She wasn't even for equal rights for gay people and equal marriage rights for gay people until the year 2013. So Hillary may be correct on that issue, but she's a laggard. Bernie Sanders was for gay rights. You go back to the civil rights era, 50 years ago, and for everything that he stands for, Medicare for all, and all of his policy positions. He's been consistent when it was deeply unpopular. So that means he's a leader. He's forward-thinking. He's progressive. The others, maybe not so much. So that's why I throw my hat in the ring for Bernie versus the other people that are coming around to the right issues, and that's great. And we can use them for when Bernie wins to be part of the anti-PAC caucus who wants to push for that 20th Amendment, getting all the private money out of politics. But as far as the leader, it's Bernie. When you got a guy that was for all these issues consistently without any flip-flopping for 50 years, including when they were deeply unpopular, that's the guy, that's the leader. He's the progressive, forward-thinking person. So that's what does it for me. All right, so there you have it. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And if you want to check out my website, I talk a little bit of politics on my website from an objective point of view. The last thing I am, which I am not, is a partisan hack. So everything is from an objective standpoint. But my website is mostly about natural healing and nothing to do with politics anyway, but that's TomBerkenmeyer.com. Just like it's spelled here on social media, TomBerkenmeyer.com. All right, everyone. Bye for now. And go Bernie Sanders 2020 because he is uncorrupt and he's going to cut those puppet strings from the corporate America real owners who control our politicians and really are the ones that set the policy for this country. He's going to snip those puppet strings and get them the fuck out. Bye for now. Feel free to share this video, okay? I'll be making some more periodically as this thing progresses because I'm going to do what I can to help him get elected.